Britain came to the submachine gun late. When the rest of the world already had one, we panicked and we copied a German police gun almost bolt for bolt. Then we built a weapon so cheap it cost about £2 and it jammed in an assassin's hands at the worst possible moment of the war. Then finally we got it right. And almost nobody noticed 6 British submachine guns, one that was stolen, one that armed half of occupied Europe, one that was a genuine work of art, one that whispered, and one that never really existed at all, not the way you think it did. You've seen them in the films. You've seen them wrong. Today, the story of what every British submachine gun is actually like, from the bench, not the brochure. I'm Tom Duggan, 20 years as a British Army armourer. If it was in service, I stripped it, fixed it, and signed it back out. Now I tell you what the manuals left out. Here's the thing nobody tells you. In 1940, after Dunkirk, Britain had almost nothing, no homegrown submachine gun, no time to design one, and a very real chance of invasion. So we did the only thing we could. We copied. The Germans had a lovely little gun, the MP-28, Hugo Schmeisser's design, an improvement on his own First World War MP-18. Its box magazine went on to seed the MP-38, the MP-40, and every British Sten that followed. The Admiralty and the RAF looked at it, and instead of inventing something British, they had Sterling Armaments build a near-exact clone. We named it the Lanchester, after George Herbert Lanchester, the man charged with producing it. A German gun, a British name, pure desperation, and that's the pattern for everything that follows. The Lanchester was honestly beautiful. Magazine housing machine from a solid block of brass, walnut furniture straight off the Lee Enfield. The Admiralty even insisted on a bayonet fitting. You could drop the thing in seawater and it barely cared, which is exactly why the Navy loved it and kept it into the 60s. But here's the catch. It cost around £14 to build, when the alternative cost 2, 7 times the money for a copy, 80,000 made between 1941 and 1943 at 600 rounds a minute. And they went full auto only. The select fire lever was a prototype toy that never reached the lads. A gorgeous over-engineered answer to a question we couldn't afford to ask. Lovely. Wasteful? While the Navy got their brass jewellery, Enfield went the other way entirely. Major Shepherd and Harold Turpin, the ST plus EN for Enfield, built the exact opposite of the Lanchester. A stamped steel tube, 47 parts, about 5 man-hours, and a cost of roughly £2.06. Turpin knocked the first prototype out in about 36 days. Around 4 million were made, the second most produced submachine gun of the whole war. It armed the resistance across occupied Europe. Over 2,000 were built in secret Polish workshops alone. And it was crude. God, it was crude. A cock Sten dropped on its butt, could chamber and fire a round all on its own. The magazine, that same double-column single-feed design we inherited from the Germans, choked the moment dirt got into the feed lips. And on the 27th of May, 1942, in Prague, a Czechoslovak agent named Josef Gadčík stepped in front of Reinhard Heydrich, pulled the trigger, and his Sten jammed, point blank. It took his partner's grenade to finish the job. That's the Sten's reputation frozen in 1 second. But the armourer in me has to say this. The historian John Walwicker put it best. The exaggerated reports of the Sten's unreliability were usually down to the quality of manufacture, not the design. A well-made late-war Sten worked fine. The horror stories come from the early guns, soft bronze bolts that wore their own sear down, cheap, deadly, occasionally to the wrong man. Now, a quick word, then I'll leave you be. Everything I've just told you about these guns, the procurement story, the specs that actually matter, and the bits the manual never printed. I've been keeping notes like these for 20 years on these weapons and every other one that ever went into service. A while back, I finally sat down and put the lot into one place, a proper illustrated field manual, the full file on each weapon written the way I'd explain it to you across the bench rather than the way the official pamphlet does. I call it the Armoury Files. If today's story is the sort of thing you'd happily read 300 more of, the link's in the description. That's it. Back to the guns. Then after the war, we finally got it right. George Patchett, chief designer at Stirling in Dagenham, submitted his first prototype in early 1944, then spent the better part of a decade winning trials. The Army adopted it as the L2A1 in 1953 and the definitive L2A3 in 1956. 2.7 kilos, folds to 481 millimeters. A 34-round curved magazine with a roller follower, one authority called one of the best ever designed. An evaluating officer said it had all the advantages and none of the disadvantages of the Sten. American riflemen called it flatly a work of art. And on the bench you could feel it, the Sten fought you. This one let go of the bolt like it wanted to. It served until the L-85 replaced it in the 90s and sold to dozens of countries. Hundreds of thousands of them, the sources argue over exactly how many. Britain unsurely correct at last. Now the one you've been waiting for, the L34A1, the silenced Sterling, in service from 1966. And this is where I have to correct the record, because what most people picture is wrong. The suppressor isn't a can bolted on the muzzle. The barrel itself is drilled with ports. Gas bleeds forward into an expansion chamber and drops the velocity from around 1,250 feet per second to roughly 970. Below the speed of sound, no sonic crack. That's the clever bit. You don't silence the bang, you stop the bullet ever breaking the sound barrier. British Special Forces carried it in the Falklands in 1982. So did the Argentines, whispering both ways. And here's where I earn your trust or lose it. You probably heard that the SAS took the silenced Sterling into the Iranian embassy in 1980, Operation Nimrod, Prince's Gate, the assault over in under 17 minutes, 5 of 6 gunmen dead. It's a great story. It's also wrong. They didn't carry the Sterling. They went in with the Heckler and Koch MP5, a German gun, and Browning high powers on their hips. I know that's not the answer you wanted, but if I fudge that to keep the tale tidy, then nothing else I've told you today is worth a damn. The Sterling was brilliant. It just wasn't there that day. Which brings me to the last one. The Sterling Patchett, the mysterious 6th gun that supposedly never replaced any of the others, except it did. And this is the myth I most want to kill. There is no separate Sterling Patchett that failed. The Patchett machine carbine was simply the Sterling's development name. Patchett was the designer, Sterling was the factory. The Patchett became the Sterling, won the trials, and replaced the Sten from 1953. Same gun, 2 names. The internet turned a footnote into a phantom, and that's the whole British submachine gun story in one line. Half of what everyone knows is just the wrong name for something real. So, what is every British submachine gun actually like? The Lanchester was a German gun we couldn't afford. The Sten was a 2-quid tube that armed a continent and jammed on history's doorstep. The Sterling was the moment we finally, quietly got it right. And the silent one was cleverer than the legend that grew up around it. We came to this late, we copied, we penny-pinched, and then, when it truly mattered, we built something an officer called a work of art, and half the world queued up to buy it. Panic, then brilliance. That's British kit all over. Right, settle something for me in the comments. Which of these would you actually want in your hands? The 2-pound Sten that armed the resistance, or the work of art Sterling that came too late to be famous? Tell me. I read every comment, and I'll do the most requested one in full next. If you got this far, you already know where the subscribe button is. I'm Tom Duggan. Back to the bench.